This is TWiT.
So after an apparent week of negotiations, the infrastructure bill in the U.S. Senate will pass with what amounts to broad language related to a cryptocurrency tax provision. There was hope along the way that things would be defined a bit more clearly, but in the end, that ultimately didn't happen. But what does this mean for crypto going forward? And joining me to talk all about this and break it down is Nikhilesh D, who's the regulatory reporter for CoinDesk. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to get you on. I appreciate your time, taking out some time to break this down because it caught my attention. I'm kind of like on the outside looking in when it comes to crypto. I'm fascinated by it, always looking to kind of expand my understanding of it. And I definitely saw on Twitter and some of the reaction after the infrastructure bill was kind of solidified, some dissatisfaction, let's say, on the minds of people who are really interested and present in the crypto space. So first of all, maybe we should talk about the gray area that's related to crypto that this provision, at least in the beginning, initially hoped to tackle. Why was it inserted into the infrastructure bill in the first place?
Yeah, so, well, that's really two questions, right? The first one is there a gray area that's, that the IRS here is looking to regulate? And I guess, the answer seems to be that the IRS does believe there are certain entities in the crypto industry that are not properly reporting their tax information. And that's a very valid concern. There's huge gaps in information reporting within the broader ecosystem, and crypto is certainly not immune to that. And so what this bill does is it creates a broadened definition of a broker for crypto tax reporting purposes. And that basically means that companies or entities that provide certain transaction services have to report more information specifically as a broker. So they have to file a specific form to the IRS for tax purposes. The second question is, why is it in this particular bill? And that one's a little harder to answer. It's being treated as a pay for, so it's not part of the actual infrastructure bills. There's no crypto infrastructure provision. It's just they're trying to raise $28 billion over 10 years, and they're looking to do that through this industry.
Okay. Yeah. And actually, I see someone in chat is kind of pointing out you already have to report crypto as income in the U.S., but that's really on gains primarily. Would this change that? Would this then sweep more kind of facets of crypto trading into the tax reporting realm? Say if if you're trading from one to another. Well, I don't know. I guess I'll stop with that question. What do you think about that?
Well, the big concern is, who exactly qualifies as a broker. And
right.
The language of the actual bill just says, let me pull this up. I have it right here. It's any person who, for consideration, is responsible for regularly providing any service, effectuating transfers of digital assets on behalf of another person. So the concern is that might also include, node operators or validators or, miners. So parties that have a crucial role in the crypto ecosystem of, maintaining blockchain network security and facilitating transactions, but they don't have customers the way that a trading platform or, crypto exchange would. And so, they might not be able to provide the same reporting information that, these exchanges could, which might make it very difficult to comply with the bill as it's currently worded.
Okay, and this really did, you pointed out, you wrote pretty extensively about this as it was happening over the course of the week, and you really pointed out that, after all of this time, we had 8 days of negotiations and everything, and in the end, the wording of the bill or the wording of this particular provision is the same in the end as it was in the beginning. All of that time spent trying to refine, all for naught, essentially, and things weren't changed
right
there. What was the missed opportunity? Like, what were you kind of hoping to see? What were people in the crypto space really hoping to see as far as a change here, a refinement?
Yeah, so the timeline of this whole thing was, at the end of July, people started reporting that there was this provision that taxes crypto. As the language, actually came out, we found out it was not a new tax, it was a broadening of an existing tax. And so it was introduced into the bill on the 1st of August, so literally less than 2 weeks ago. People within the industry in particular, advocated for changing it. Fight for the Future, which is not a crypto-specific organization, but it is a tech advocacy group, started a campaign to try and change it, specifically just to narrow the language to address brokers as, trading platforms, exchanges, parties that have the KYC information that would be needed to comply. Several amendments were introduced, one by Senators Ron Wyden, Pat Toomey, and Cynthia Lummis, so a bipartisan group that sought to narrow it. Another amendment was introduced by Senators Mark Warner and Rob Portman, so again, another bipartisan group. However, none of these amendments were really considered because, not for crypto reasons, but in the end, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer just didn't allow any amendments to be discussed or voted on. So my understanding is that was all, that's just a political process. There was a lot going on outside of the crypto stuff, but no amendments were considered. There was a last-ditch effort on Monday to introduce a compromise amendment, but due to Senate procedural rules and a single objector, that also wasn't considered. And so now it's up to the House to take a look and most likely pass this as is.
Are you at all hopeful that the House of Representatives, I guess my limited understanding of the legal process at this point, it's off to the House of Representatives. Do they have the power or the ability to make any of these changes and then send that back over to the Senate? Or is that even likely to happen? And it sounds like it's probably pretty unlikely.
Yeah, so I'm doing some reporting around this. My understanding is that if the House were to try and change it, they would have to make sure that at the end of the day, the numbers still match up. So right now, the Senate projected that this provision would raise $28 billion across 10 years. If the House does change it, they'd have to have some reasonable attempt at squaring those numbers so that you don't suddenly have a $28 billion hole in whatever projected revenue you're generating. That being said, there is a bipartisan effort to try and modify the language. Earlier today, Representative Anna Issue out of California wrote a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying we should change this. We should adopt the compromise amendment introduced on Monday and modify the language. So my understanding is that, as of this morning, it's a long shot, but there's definitely a growing and, again, importantly, bipartisan effort to modify the language to try and narrow it down and ensure that, miners are not treated as brokers.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, obviously, this is, crypto is not new necessarily, but it is still kind of like this emerging thing. There's a lot of misunderstandings around it. People who are in it, pretty darn clear on it. People who aren't, and I would, imagine that Washington, D.C. and lawmakers and stuff are, they're on the outside looking in, trying to figure out exactly what they do. And this is, of course, a part of that process. But this is also shining a light on the fact that cryptocurrency is in the zeitgeist enough for there to be energy and attention being placed on it in something as big as the infrastructure bill. What does this say about the legitimacy of cryptocurrency, at least in the eyes of Washington lawmakers?
Yeah, no, to me, it seems that Washington lawmakers think crypto is here to stay. At the end of the day, what we saw with even the introduction of this bill is a group of senators saying we think crypto will stick around for at least the next 10 years and generate enough revenue that we can tax it. And I'm not here to shill crypto or anything. My job is just to report on it, but that seems to me to be a striking endorsement of the idea that crypto is here to stay. So clearly, even before the last couple of weeks started, lawmakers were saying, okay, well, this is an industry that's being, that exists, and we're gonna have to take a look at that. And after the last 2 weeks, like I said, Fight for the Future started a call-in campaign, and I think they got at least 40 to almost 50,000 calls placed. So, there were a huge number of calls placed to the 100 senators' offices in the U.S. The provision, held up negotiations briefly, or were part of negotiations for quite a bit of, time for this huge $1 trillion, infrastructure bill that's been a priority for the presidential administration. There's been a lot of noise. You've seen senators and House representatives on both sides of the political aisle weigh in on this and say, we think XYZ should happen. So it does seem that, DC, I don't think they're waking up. I think they've woken up to the fact that crypto is here, and they think of it as something that will remain for quite a while and has a growing political voice now.